Turn it up.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ian Miller. Tonight, I'm very excited about this particular guest. Why don't I just have him introduce yourself? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, my name is Robert J. Sodaro. That's my professional name. I go by Bob, but I sign all my work Robert J. I've been, as I was just telling Ian, I've been reading comic books my entire life. As long as I've been able to read, I've been reading comics. I started reading them, the funnies in the newspaper. I graduated to comic books. I started reading them in '61. I became get involved in fandom and a couple of APAs in the late '70s while I was in college. I My first published article was in Amazing Heroes #5, and that was in '81. And my first comic book that I created was for uh, uh, Renegade Press, Denny Lobera's titles, and it was called Agent Unknown, and it was my version of Shield actually. And unfortunately, we only got 3 issues of that out before the market crashed. But the good news is that I'm with a new publisher. My brain is turning off on me. Dark Fire Press, and from with J.M. DeSantis, and he's going to republish the Agent Unknown stuff in color for me.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's gonna. I'm getting a color right now, and hopefully that should be available next year. But I've been involved as a journalist for about 20 years in comics, covering the industry in virtually every comic magazine that came out in the '80s and '90s, and I like comic books.
Okay, we're getting along just fine already.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so you've obviously seen the different changes and the different ages of comics from '61 to obviously now.
Hmm.
Um, in your opinion, what was the best period of comics?
Oh, I'm going to go with the Silver Age because that's what I came of age, and that's what I really got into the comics. And I think that in your teen years, in your early years, whatever you fall into, whatever you hook onto, that's where
Yeah,
you go. I think that if your first thing you get exposed to at that time in the '60s was the Grateful Dead, you would have grown up to be a Deadhead. If the first thing you got involved with was Star Trek, you'd be a Trekker. I got involved with comics first, and I was involved with a lot of those different things. And somebody said to me in high school, pick one thing and go with that. I picked comic books, and I haven't you know I haven't objected to that. Now, here's the thing: I credit the three great creators of my era, Stan, Jack, and Steve,
yeah.
and I absolutely adored the three of those guys, and mostly Stan and Steve. I kind of it was a little later when I really got to appreciate Jack's work, and then of course John Romita Sr. because I'm a Spider-Man fan,
Yeah,
and
me too.
uh, yeah, and so I love that stuff. I love that early stuff. That was amazing to me. There was a period I kind of stepped away from comics, 95, 96.
Mhm.
Um, I had just attended my first and only San Diego Comic Con back then,
Oh,
and I was, oddly enough, every comic magazine that was being published at the time had a convention issue, and I had a cover feature story in every one of those issues. Yeah, exactly. And right after that, the market crashed, and all the magazines that I had been working for went under, and I stepped away from the industry for about 6 years. I came back in I guess 2001, 6 years from that, from '95, whatever that was. I can't do the math in my head. And
yeah.
but the thing was, when I came back, comics had completely changed. Everything was different, and it took me a while to figure out how to read comics again. It was very, something that I've been reading my entire life. I was confused by everything a little bit. It seemed that the whole color palette. I mean, I went mostly with Marvels, but the color palette just seemed to be everything was blue, everything was red, everything was green, and very few things that I remember, including the creators, I didn't know who anybody was, and it took me a while to get reacclimated into the industry again, which is kind of a bit of a culture shock for me.
Well, I can imagine because at that point, comics obviously had changed during the early 2000s because there were new voices and also different takes on certain things. And at that point, we start to see the resurgence of the indie, publishing companies because they kind of went, away in the 90s. We saw obviously Image. That's the big one,
Mm-hmm.
because they took chances and they were an independent company, but we didn't see any of the smaller ones. Slowly and surely, we start to see them, and now they've exploded. And you know, we're at a point where we can talk about this type of stuff because during the 70s and the 80s, indies weren't quite there. They were there, but they weren't, in the public's mind that much. But now they clearly are.
The in the '60s, when I started reading comic books, I mean, there were a number of companies. There was Harvey and Archie and Charlton and Dell and Gold Key, and I read all those. My uncle owned a small a grocery store, and
Mhm.
I used to hang out there with my father, who was working there for a while, and I would sit on a newsstand and read comic books, which made my uncle crazy, made my father crazy, because I'm sitting in a newsstand and I'm reading comic books. But I read everything. I read Little Lulu, I read Little Dot, I read Archie comic books, I read the Love comic books. None of it. It didn't matter to me. They were comic books, and I wanted to read them. And
Yeah.
I got a really good history of what was going on at the time. I mean, and when I got older, I started picking up some of the Golden Age reprints, and I've had this conversation a couple of times. The Golden Age reprints just didn't do anything for me. I thought that the stories were static. No disrespect to the creators of the comics themselves, but they weren't interesting. Good guys were good guys, bad guys were bad guys. There was no real reason for it, and the stories just kind of moved along because this is what we're doing, and it was all disposable stuff. And
Mm.
in the '60s, the especially the stuff by Stan got he was kind of he was putting subtleties into it. He was adding in Norse mythology and Greco-Roman mythology, and just myths, and I think that's why I was more attracted to the Marvel stuff than the DC stuff. Although I did read all the DC stuff at the time, and then of course in the '80s and '90s, all the explosion of of new companies. There was Image, like you said, Image and Dark Horse and Malibu, and just a whole gamut. And again, I was reading all of those books, and I'm going to be the MD of every fanboy of the day. I was on the comp list for most of those companies for a while, so I was getting comic books sent to me, which was really kind of fun. I mean, I was working at Marvel for Marvel Age,
Mm.
and and I made contacts at Valiant and Dark Horse and Malibu, and and these guys were sending me their comics, and I was like, wow, okay, I was I was in fanboy heaven. And then of course the market crashed, and it all came to an end. But again, I still love the comics, and I still love corporate comics, but I really love indie comics, and I'm big. I'm a big supporter of the the Kickstarter
Yeah.
model, because those comics are basically being done by guys I know, and I want to support my friends, and those stories are in some they're more interesting because it's the author writing his own titles, writing his own characters. It's not, I'm on Spider-Man this week, and I'm going to stay here for 5 issues, and then I'm going to jump over to Thor, and then I'm going to jump over to something else. You know what? I want somebody who's committed. Stan did what 100 issues of Spider-Man in a row. He did the 100 issues of the Fantastic Four. That's a commitment. You're there with the characters. You're living and you're growing with them. And I had this conversation just recently with, and again, no disrespect to Todd McFarlane, but the run he did on the adjectiveless Spider-Man, not my favorite run, because Spidey never took his mask off. He never interacted with any of Peter Parker's friends. He was always Spider-Man the whole time. And for me, growing up reading it, the Fantastic Four was the entire breadth of the Marvel universe, because they interacted with everybody. It was all space opera. It was all amazing stuff. Spider-Man, I think he went like 50 issues without introducing a new character. And it was all about the cast. It was all about it was a very soap operatic, and you really got to know these characters. And now I'm reading Spider-Man now, and well, Flash is a superhero. Oh, Mary Jane's a superhero. Oh, you know what? They're all superheroes. They're not. They don't interact with everyday people anymore. And Spider-Man he's a street level character. I get it that they want to do some Doctor Strange kind of things, but mostly I want him to fight crime. I want him to fight the Kingpin, fight the Rose, fight every ordinary day heroes characters. But then again, that's just me.
No, it's not just you, it's me as well, because I stopped reading the comic for a number of years now. Every once in a while I'll jump back into it, but I'm like, okay, this is not the character that I read as a kid. This is not. No. We don't see any growth there. We don't see the supporting cast, even though they are there. But they're part of the heart and soul, what makes Peter do what he does. So I was completely disappointed.
Yeah, but again, I like I said, I read a lot of indie books. It's been supporting the Kickstarter model, and actually, I have on my Facebook. On Facebook, I run a Kickstarter, a crowdsourcing comic book page, so that if somebody's running a comic book crowdsourcing, I back it. I don't always necessarily back it, but I'm always promoting him. And from my experience, people who come on my page and let me back and are backed in the page and promoted there, they get a significant increase in the amount of people backing their product. So
it's the same when people come onto my podcast, because they want to talk about the product, and I'm obviously intrigued, and I promote it, and they do get an increase as well. So really, word of mouth does help, and also just talking about it with the creators helps as well.
Yeah, and what we do is we don't allow people to come on and say, "Hey, we can help you with your Kickstarter." Nope, we don't allow that at all, because first of all, again, I just think it's all a scam. Second of all, I want the creator to actually get all the money, and I really don't. Some of these people may actually be honest people, and again, no disrespect, but from most of what I heard, a lot of it is, they're very sketchy. So we only allow, first of all, we're only promoting comic book Kickstarters or crowdsourcing, and we only allow people who are actually promoting. We don't let people come on and say, "Hey, I'm an artist and I can come on your project." No, we don't do that. We don't allow people to pitch themselves. You're doing a comic book, we'll talk about it. We'll let you go. We'll let you run there.
Yeah.
So, okay. And again, as I said, I've been writing comic books for a while. I've been contributing to a lot of anthologies. Guy named Jim Main, old friend of mine. He used to run a comic shop here in the Connecticut area, and he was publishing his own fanzines for a while. So I was writing for his fanzines as well. And about 10, 15 years ago, he he needed somebody to actually help him produce the books, a designer. And I'm a computer graphic artist, so I jumped in and I've been helping him put his books together. And in addition to the fanzines, he was publishing his own comics, and I submitted a bunch of stories to his comics. And he stopped a while back doing comics, but now he's still doing the fanzines. I recently, what I got was he allowed me to take all of the comics that I wrote and put them into my own omnibus. So I have an omnibus of the 20 or so stories that I did for him in one book. So there's that. And
Wow.
and again, I'm a big Steve Ditko fan. So this year I got myself invited to the Ditko Con in Jonestown, Pennsylvania, which was Steve's hometown.
Ooh.
An amazing show, and it's very, very cool venue called the Bottle Works building. And they have at the back of the Bottle Works building a Steve Ditko mural painted on the back of the building. And oh my God, it's absolutely gorgeous. And there's a brewery in town that has another mural painted on the side, another Steve Ditko style mural, and it was just beautiful. And I met a bunch of Steve's his nieces and nephews and his cousins, and wonderful people. And and it was just so much fun. I picked up a couple of Ditko T-shirts and some Ditko fanzines, and it was great. And my contribution, the very first article I wrote for Amazing Heroes was a study of Steve Ditko's run on Spider-Man. And my second published article was for the Fantico Chronicles, where I did the same thing, but for John Romita Sr.'s run on Spider-Man. So I took and those are 40 years ago, those two articles. So I took the I still have the original print runs of those. So I OCR'd them and redesigned it and relaid it out and put them together and published it in my own fanzine, a run of a retrospective of Steve and Johnny. And so I had that. That's and then and again, I've been doing on this run of republishing my stuff, because as I said, a lot of my stuff was in different comic books, and I wanted to put them all in. Most of the comics that I did or magazines I worked on are no longer in print, so I have all the copies. I scanned them all back in, and I published a book of. I did a bunch of flying stories. World War II, World War. We all know the Wright brothers were the first to fly, except no, they weren't. They a guy named Gustav Whitehead, who lived in my hometown of Fairfield, Connecticut. He actually built and flew a plane 2 years before the Wright brothers.
Wow.
And I knew about this because my a high school science teacher was a ultralight plane flyer, and he learned about Gustav Whitehead, and he built a replica of Old 21 Gustav's plane, and he flew it just to prove that it would work. And he flew the plane, and so I remember telling him that, oh, this would make a really good comic book, and then it took me 35 years to actually create the comic book. So I wrote a couple of stories about one about Gustav Whitehead and one about a kid who flew during World War I, and a story about Icarus flying, and I took all of those stories and I put them together in a book about flying.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I belong to a writing group here on Facebook, and they've published 3 anthology collections: Western, a fantasy, a romance, and then they said, oh, they wanted to do another one, and I talked them into doing a superhero anthology, and I had stories in each of those other 3 anthologies. So we had this one ongoing superhero anthology, and it just wasn't getting off the ground. It was supposed to be published in 2023. It never got published, and in 2025, the editor was like, you know what, this is not going to get done. The published, it just fell apart for reasons that I'm not privy to. And I said, no, I can publish it. I'm a designer. I'm a book designer. Let me do it. Okay, fine. And they turned it over to me, and I shepherded the thing and got it out in print. And so there's it's called Writers Unite, Dimensions of the Superheroes. And again, it's up on Amazon. You can find it. So, but what I did was I cheated a little bit. I took there were like 10 or so authors from the group, the Facebook group that we were in. And I'm personal friends with Gary Kahn, who did Blue Devil for DC, and Paul Kopperberg, who did, well, everything else. And and Will Murray, who's a pulp fiction writer. And actually, I designed some books for Paul. I've also designed books for Will and Gary. And I got those three guys. Plus, I got a guy named T.C. Ford, who's also been in and around the industry, and he's worked for Charlton. And I got and those guys, and there was another guy, Dave No, who works for Indelible. You know, he shepherds Indelible Comics, and and those guys are comic book names, but you know, honestly, Paul, Will, and Gary are very well known. I figured I could get those guys in to this book. It would help raise the level of people who would be interested in buying it. And you know, so they all wrote stories for me, and it really came out very well. The stories that they wrote were amazing. The story that Will wrote was just wild pulp fiction superhero pastiche that was just amazing. And Gary's story was also very, very cool, and just comes at you from a different direction. And Paul wrote he gave me a story about three old Jewish guys sitting in a diner talking about, and one of them was a cop. There wasn't really a superhero in it, but it was Paul, and it was just a very well put together story. It was just so good. And so I really enjoyed, you know, being able to get these guys in and get the story out there. So
yeah, that should be, because again, they're talented people, you know, and the fact that you got a chance to really, you know, read their works while you were, you know, editing it, you were like, I am jealous. I'm very jealous.
well, that was the point of my telling the story. So and but yeah, and I'm taking and the Agent Unknown stories that I think I don't know if I guess I said this, the Agent Unknown stories that I did for Daniel Lebert. I am right now, I have it out. A friend of mine is coloring it, and that'll get published by Darkfire. But I met JM a number of years back. We were a different a group called CAG. It was a bunch of guys we were trying to put comics out, and we did a couple of them. And JM really liked my character, and the character I was doing at the time was called Wolf Girls. And they're the Wolf Girls are a pair of underage sisters who are werewolves that hunt pedophiles.
Ooh.
And I just want to say, and I feel obligated to say this, that story is almost 20 years old, so nothing that's going on in the current political climate has anything to do with why this story is out there. The prompt I was given was, write a story in the 21st century that frightens you. And when my daughter was 3 years old, she disappeared from me in a mall. She was following her mother across a food court to the bathroom, and she's fine. Nothing happened. But I did. Oh, okay. Looked away. Look back. Wait, where is she? And she's gone, and absolutely lost my mind. And I call security. First thing you say, what is your daughter wearing? Clothes. I don't know. I don't know what she's wearing. I couldn't think. I didn't know what I was doing. All I could think of was, I now have to explain to my mother that I lost her granddaughter. And then when her mother came walking back across the food court, I didn't know how to say anything to her. The crowd parted, and my daughter's next to her holding her hand, and she didn't she didn't know that our daughter was following her. She just got there all the way there, and she said, "Did you tell your father?" Yes. No, you didn't. But now they're both in line. They both have to go to the bathroom, and we don't have cell phones.
Oh gosh.
So always keep a cell phone on you. Keep a picture of your kid on your cell phone. Take a picture when you go out with your kids, so you have them with you. But so that terrified me. So I wrote a story about two girls who were being stalked by a pedophile, except they weren't being stalked. They were stalking him because they wanted to go after him. So I wrote that story, and then I wrote two follow-up stories, and they got put together in this book that JM put out for me. And the Wolf Girl book is out. It's available on a couple of different platforms. And let's see something here. And we're on Indie Planet and Global Comics. Or we also you could also fire us at darkfire.com. We have a bunch of other books available there. While I wrote the first Wolf Girl story and wrote the first Wolf Girl story had been published, and I had written and was waiting for the second one to be published. I needed to do something to keep myself busy. So the job I was working on, when we would break for lunch or coffee breaks, what I would do is I took out what I used to call my semi-smart phone, and I started typing a story, and I typed a novella on my phone in two very, very long texts, which I then saved to my computer. I edited them together, and I went over and I edited and fixed it, and that's my the novella Taste the Moon, where it's a story that takes place between the first Wolf Girl story that got illustrated work and the second illustrated Wolf Girl story. So it's and that's like we're right on the cusp of that dropping right now. I'm hoping to get it this week because I'm going to a book fair Saturday, and I'm hoping to have it with me. And I'm not sure that I will, but I have a bunch of other books that I will have. So.
Well, first of all, I'm just intrigued by the concept. I mean, you got the two teenage girls who are werewolves going after pedophiles. I never heard of that.
Yeah, they're pre-teenage, and again, when I pitched it, I said the guy who actually solicited my work. He said, listen, I'm doing this thing we're doing a horror book, and I want you to write a story for me. And I said, okay, let's be clear. First of all, I don't like horror. I'm not a big fan. And second of all, I haven't written in a year. I haven't written anything in a year, and I haven't written fiction in almost 10 years. So I'm not your guy. No, you're my guy. You're my guy. All right, listen, I can't have this conversation right now. My son's at work. Let me go pick him up. My son was 15. He was at a job. And I said, all right, let me go pick him up. I drove to pick him up. I came home. An hour could not have passed. And I called this guy back, and I said, let me see if this makes you. And he said, yeah, that's exactly the story I want. And I went, okay. And I wrote the story. And the first six, it was an 8-page story. The first 6 pages I wrote in a week. And it took me another week to write the last 2 pages because that's where, I spring on you that they're werewolves. And it was just something that bothered me. It was a little difficult for me to get there. When my father read the story, he almost stopped talking to me because it was a disturbing story. And I said, Pop, really, get over it. It's a story. They were the ones stalking him. He wasn't stalking them, and everything's okay. It's really good. I'm not deranged. I'm not, I'm very vanilla. It's just a story. I'm not sure he ever quite got it, but that's okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure when he read it, he was like, "My son wrote this."
Listen, the guy who illustrated Matt Ryan, he illustrated the first two chapters of it, and he's illustrating the first one, and his wife is giving birth to his daughter as
Oh
he's
God!
writing it, and he's going, "What kind of a lunatic am I working with?" But Matt and I are really good friends. He understood. He got there, but it was actually interesting. So it was fun to share that moment with him.
Yeah, especially with his wife getting about to give birth. Oh God!
He said he was literally in the delivery room while waiting. He was drawing the story.
In the waiting room.
Yeah, well, in the
Oh,
while his wife is well, he was in
yeah,
with, but yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, he was yeah.
Oh my God! Oh,
Yeah,
that's hysterical. That's a great story.
yeah, I love that. But yeah, and Matt, like I said, Matt and I are still friends all these years, and it's like 19 years later from that moment.
Wow.
Yeah, took me a while to get the first two stories were published by the original publisher. Um, the third chapter was published by Indelible, and let me tell you about Indelible Comics. Indelible, they're a bunch of guys that are they're all semi-pros. They've all worked in the industry for a little bit. They've all done a little bit of stuff, and they've decided Dell Comics are in the public domain. So we're using their characters in brand new stories. We're writing brand new stories with their characters, and I picked up Owl Girl, which is one of their
Yeah.
stories that So I've been writing a couple of Owl Girl stories, and so we we've got like I don't know, a dozen books or so out, and you can get all the Indelible books up on Amazon. They're all very good. It's a lot of fun working in a shared universe with a previously existing characters, because I don't have to think about who you are, what your powers are, what your superhero name is, what city you live in, who your villains are. I can just go, oh, Owl Girl, she's fun. And that's that. Let me write a story on doing that, and I you put all these elements together. Let's write a story, and I've written a bunch of stories. We've done some prose stuff. We've done a bunch of comic books. Some of the guys also are working on kind of a sister publication. They're not really. It's two different companies, but there's a lot of crossover in the creators. It's called Dark Sister, where they do some more adult themed stuff,
Mm.
which is also kind of cool. So, those are available up on Amazon.
All right. All right.
Yeah. So it's and then I'm working with Ray Felix, and I don't know if you know Ray, but he's a guy you definitely want to talk to. He's he's publishing his own comic books. He's been running some shows in New York and in the Bronx, and he's got a nice body of work himself. He's publishing comics called A World Without Superheroes, and when he did that, he got hit with a cease and desist order from Marvel and DC, because Marvel and DC back in the 70s, they co-copyrighted the word superhero, and
Oh.
you can't use the word superhero. You can't sell superhero shoes. You can't sell superheroes soup. You can't sell anything with the word. You can't use superhero anywhere. And and Ray did, and they said stop, and Ray said no. That's a word in common practice, and it existed before you guys start. And he countersued. He defended himself. He couldn't get a lawyer. He couldn't get any lawyers from the council for the defending of the comic book arts. He couldn't get any of those guys. CBLDF. He couldn't get them to help him because they didn't want a part of it. because they're backed by the big guys. And he defended himself, and it took him 10 years of going to court and standing up for himself and doing all his own research, and he won. He beat Marvel and DC, and they let him use the word superhero. And now, just recently, they dropped their claim to copyright, so you can use the word superhero now.
Actually, I remember this case. I remember this very vividly. That's why the name sounds so familiar to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. I keep telling him he's my superhero because he's just amazing. The abilities that he does. He writes, he draws, he defends himself in court. He runs comic book shows, and he's got a couple of stories that I wrote, and he's publishing them. They should be coming out probably early next year. So I'm doing world building, but I'm doing it across like 4 or 5 different companies. You know, all
Isn't
my
that great?
Yeah, I love it. It's very cool because and the thing that's very cool to me is I've been part of this collective for quite a lot of years, and it turns out, and I'm always surprised, but I never should be. We all know each other. If I don't know you, I know someone who knows you, and I'm friends with people who. Wait, how do you know him? Well, we work in comics. Of course we know each other, and I kind of expect the guys at Marvel to know each other and the guys who know at DC and the guys who work at Marvel and DC to know each other. But I'm talking about guys who work for little tiny companies that publish 2 and 3 titles, and and they know each other. We all know each other, and it's like the coolest thing in the world to be able to just be in a group of people and go, hey, Bob, I was at in '95, I was in the San Diego Comic Con, and Tony Isabella was standing there, and I said, and I know Tony. I know who Tony is. I know Tony because I read Tony's stuff, and I wrote a book in 2001 about kiddie meal collectibles, and it was fast food toys and collectibles. So I did this book, and I sent the book when it got published to Tony because I knew Tony did reviews, and he reviewed my book, and he liked it, and he had some interesting things to say. So I saw him there, and I was like, I want to say hi to Tony. And I saw he was talking to somebody, and I very respectfully waiting, and he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, hey, Bob, how you doing? I'll be with you in a minute." Like, wow, Tony Isabella knows me. And then I looked down and I go, "Oh, I'm wearing a badge." So, yeah, we do know each other.
That's also what's great about the indie community, because eventually we do know people and meet new people because we knew these other people. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm also very appreciative of how connected we are, but also how protective we are of each other, especially of each other's work, and supportive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I'm, and I'm part of a couple of Facebook pages with about writers and comics, and someone will say something. If I know something that you don't know, I'm happy to share that information with you. I was talking to some artist a while back, and he was working on his first comic book, and he was trying to figure out how many pages he wanted in his comic book. And I said, well, it's got to be an even number of pages divisible by 4. And he said, why? And I said, because you have a piece of paper, and here's your piece of paper, and then you fold it in half, and you have 4 pages. So you want to put more pages in, you got to put 4 more pages in. And he went, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, I'm sorry, how long have you been reading? I'm sorry, but really? I mean, because I remembered, I figured out reading comic books, they're 4, 8, 16, 32, 48 pages. Why is that? Oh, wait, let me figure that one out. And yeah, exactly. So, so I try to help out those things. So, and I've helped out with, editing, and helping people with, all right, every page has got to be one scene, and every panel has to be one set of action. And you can't have more than 35 words in a page, and you can't have more than, and you got to have like 6, 8 maybe 8 panels per page. If you're Steve Ditko or or somebody like that, you can maybe get more panels in a page. But no, don't try it. And you want to write a story? Fine, write an 8-page story. No, I have a 64 epic 100-page each story that I'm going to write. No, you're not. You're not, because it's not going to happen. No one's going to read it. You're never going to get it done, and you're not Jack Kirby.
Nobody's gonna be Jack Kirby. Nobody's gonna be Jack. I mean, for God's sakes.
We're never going to get another Jack Kirby. But
No.
and they don't understand. You know what? I grew up reading 8-page short stories. I thought when the first bunch of stories that I wrote were all 8-pagers, and then somebody told me they wanted a 16-pager, so I wrote the story, and I wrote it in 8 pages, and I went, oh wow, what am I going to do now? Oh wait, subplot. So I added a subplot, and I cheated on one page. I did a double-page spread, and I got my 16 pages.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's again, my first job out of college was writing radio ad spots, and I was writing 30 and 60-second spots. Tell the whole story in 30 seconds.
That's a talent.
Yeah,
that's a talent.
So now I'm working. One of the other groups I'm working with is Weird Fiction Quarterly, and we're doing a buddy of mine from Canada hooked me up with this guy from England who started this book, and write a 500-word flash fiction story, exactly 500 words, and we're not counting your name and the title of the story. The story's got to be 500 words. Do that. Do it consistently. Do it 4 times a year for 2 years.
Oh.
And I've done it, and I've been in every issue, and sometimes I can get it like almost right on the nose, and sometimes it's, oh no, it's 650 words. I got to cut out words. Oh, I hate cutting out words.
Well, as long as you get it down and without, taking out the spine of the story or any of the specific details, you'll be fine.
Well, again, I pretty much, like I said, I started writing 30 and 60-second spots, so it's not that difficult. I can do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot
easy
of fun.
when you know how.
Exactly. So
okay, so why don't we show them where they could find the books? Let's just
okay,
because I have the link down below. It's been scrolling the whole time, but let's just show them the actual page itself.
Okay. Okay, you're going to do that. Yep, there we go.
Yeah. Yes. So obviously this is for the comic, and it's available on Indie Planet and Global Comics, as we said.
Yep. Yeah. Wolf Girls. Yeah. This is Melvin Yalgan. He did this. Mm-hmm. This. Oh my God! When I saw this image, I fell in love with this stuff. That's such a cool cover for it.
It says a lot without actually saying too much.
Yep. And again, it took me a while to figure out that there's this shadow over here is a shadow of a wolf, and there's a body hanging from the tree up there. And then there's a
there's also
yeah.
There's also the sign of the Pentagon right there.
Yep. Yeah, this is Matt's page from the first issue.
Wow. Nice artwork.
That's also that is that's Rick Lundeen. He did the third issue. That's the third story.
Hmm.
That's also Rick. That's a 1-pager that Rick did.
Wow. Nice stuff.
Yeah, Rick's also an incredible artist. Very, very different from Matt, but it's okay.
Different is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, different is good. And then this is the novella,
which you can also purchase on Amazon and also Barnes and Nobles.
Mm-hmm. Barnes and Noble, right? Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And again, I have it. Oh, and the cool part of this is there's an introduction by Steve Bissette. I interviewed. Yeah, see, there you go. I ran into Steve at a comic show up in New Hampshire, I believe, and I came back, and that's when I was still working for Amazing Heroes, and Steve was just about to publish his Taboo series, and I came back to my editor Kim Thompson and said, "Hey Kim, I just ran into Steve, and he'll give me an interview for Taboo." And he said, "Oh, definitely, go get it." So I called up Steve and I said, "Hey, I want to do an interview." He said, "Oh, I'm not ready for it." I said, "All right." So I called Kim back and said, "He's not ready. What do I do?" "We'll wait for it because it's Steve." Okay. I called Steve once a month for a year, waiting for him. And finally he said, "I'm ready." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." So I did an interview with him, and I started the interview by saying, "Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm doing this because I'm getting paid. I really don't like horror. So, you know, that's not my thing." And he went, "Okay, let's talk." We talked for 4 hours. Every single reference he made, horror reference, whether it was a book, a comic, a film, a TV show, I knew what he was talking about because I had seen them all. And it never occurred to me that, and I keep telling people, I'm not a big fan of horror, but I have experienced a lot of it. And so I knew what was going on. So when I wrote the Wolf Girl story, I got in touch with him and I said, "I'm now on your side of the table. I just wrote I just wrote a horror story." And I sent him a copy of it, and I told him that I was writing a novella, and would he write the introduction to it? And he said, "Sure, no problem." So he's been waiting about 15 years for this book to come out because he wrote it way back when. So as soon as I get my hands on a copy, I'm sending him a couple because he's been very, very patient, and I still have his address over here someplace.
He's gonna love the fact that it's coming to him when you get the books in your hands. He's gonna love it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. Now the funny part is, one of the groups of people that I was doing when I was working with, we did a graphic album. There were 10 of us, and we each did a short story based on a real or fictional character. So it's a fictional story about one or the other. And I said, and when the book came out, and I looked at it, and I went, "Oh wait, we had Gary Cohn did an introduction to this thing. Why isn't there a blurb on the cover that says introduction by Gary Cohn?" And they went, "Oh, it didn't occur to us." And I said, "Are you kidding me? Listen to me. I have no ego here, and I'm going to tell you something. I am more well known than everybody else in this book. Gary is a quantum level above me, and people will buy the book just because Gary wrote the introduction." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we really? How do you not know these things? I know this." I don't know, but maybe I just assume everybody knows what I know, and clearly that's not the case.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know. Anyway.
Anyway. Okay. Bob, I can't thank you enough for coming on to talk to me and talk to us about your books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited for you, especially, this particular novella coming out. I'm not a horror buff myself, although I do occasionally enjoy it, but I guarantee you that this is definitely going to be a bestseller.
Oh, you know what? From your lips to the audience's ears. So that would be really great. I appreciate it.
Guys, if you guys love horror, check out Taste the Moon, and please don't forget to actually purchase Wolf Girls on either Indie Planet or Global Comics, and please buy Taste the Moon on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course. Before we go, I'd just like to actually plug my own stuff. This is my own comic called Conan Hunter. It's also on indieplanet.com. We've got 3 issues coming on. Actually, 3 issues on the site. It's a sci-fi spy thriller. So imagine James Bond meets Star Trek meets Star Wars meets Guardians of the Galaxy, and you get Conan Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently working on issues 4 and 5 right now. Should get a update soon, and then you can also get an update on my Kickstarter, which I'm hoping to do like at the towards the middle of January of next year.
Okay. And when you get your book out on Kickstarter, um, back my comic book Kickstarter. That's on Facebook. Hit me up, and I'll promote it there.
Okay. As I said to Will last week, Bob, I hope to have you back.
Absolutely. When the Agent Unknown book comes out next year, we'll come out and we'll talk about that one.
Absolutely.
All right. Nice
All
meeting you.
It was great meeting you too, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that's going to be it for us tonight. I'm Ian Miller, and this has been Triple Threat Comics YouTube channel. Have yourselves a great night.
Good night, everyone.